Hey guys, in today's video I wanted to do one of my devil's advocate type videos. I probably am planning on doing two of these this weekend just because they're quick and fast for me. I already have a couple ideas lined up, which is not the usual for me. Usually I kind of come up with these the day of, but in preparation for my weekend in Atlantic City, I tried to come up with some topics ahead of time. So today's topic is which fruit can you throw the farthest? And this is a topic I noticed on Twitter as I was scrolling through last night. And the reason it kind of stuck out to me is the user argued that his answer would be an avocado. And at first, I was very questioning of this because the obvious answers seemed like rounder fruits. But an avocado, I understand why he said it now that I read the article. I read the Twitter feed a bit more. Aside from the major issue with the fact it's off center, the pit is kind of very far down. To throw it, you would have to have some kind of spiral motion to it in order for it to stay straight on its trajectory. Other than that, it's a very dense, it's a good size, it has a rough surrounding so it grips in your hand well. So in all those cases, it's good, but that off-centered factor of it makes it very, very difficult to throw in an optimal way. A similar argument can be given with potatoes. Again, very dense, very good size if you get the right type, but off-center because they're usually lopsided and stuff. You might be able to make something like a russet potato work decently, where they're more round and stuff, but they're kind of small. His other argument that he wanted to point out very specifically was that apples have a slippery exterior. This is something that I don't know how much of an issue that'd be. I've never had an issue of like holding an apple and the skin being so slippery it's like sliding out of my hand. So assuming that slip factor isn't there, I would think the apple is the clear winner in this. It's very, very dense. The size is ideal for throwing. We've seen many, many examples of having apples thrown at people and things like that. Not really people. It's not, I guess, a super common thing, but it's more common in a lot of the other things that were listed. Other users obviously weighed in on this Twitter post with things like, oh, if you throw a coconut, a coconut's basically rock, but that's obviously very large. Another one is that people were big in the kiwi, lemon, lime type family because they're very small and have the rough exterior. But I guess if you have a smaller hand, that makes sense. But to do maximum damage, a lemon, lime, and kiwi are just a bit too small. You might be able to whip them a bit better. But as far as truly going for distance and damage, the real question is distance. How far can you throw it? So if you're sticking purely to the question, lemon, lime, kiwi, all those like smaller round fruits might be a decent answer. Another interesting answer is a tomato because that's like the ideal throwing fruit that we've seen in shows and movies and things like that, as you throw tomatoes. Again, if you're worried about an apple slipping though, a tomato I would say is much, much slippier than an apple. Also you have the factor of it's not dense at all. It has a lot of water in it. So that could A, throw it off center, and B, doesn't cause maximum damage if you're throwing it. A very interesting post by a user was that there's a theory that if you throw a banana at the proper angle and trajectory and all that, it will act as a boomerang. Obviously, I think this was meant to be a joke, but in theory, if you were able to throw a banana and it acted as a boomerang and would come back to you and all that, a banana would be a very, very interesting answer. More comical answer, not at all official answer, was that someone said a carrot is very aerodynamic because it's pointy, almost like a dart, or even a like small like pointy plane. The obvious issue with a carrot is that they're not big enough where you could really like put a spiral on it and throw it that way. If you threw it, it would have to be like a dart basically, and that's not ideal for a carrot. They're too wonky. They're very rarely like perfectly straight. They usually have bends and stuff. Also, for most of these fruits, it seemed that people wanted to use the full foliage of the fruit. So in the case, fruits and vegetables. So for the case of the carrot, you would likely have the green like leaves and stuff coming out of the top of it. So that would definitely make it an instant loser in that case. An interesting answer for a similar way would be something like a radish. Again, it probably has the green coming out of the top of it, but if you got a good sized radish, I think it could do some damage. Again, that's a vegetable that's has very weird shape to it sometimes, so dangerous there. And then onions were brought up a bit, which I could get. Onions are very dense, very round, good size, but the risk of the husk of a onion coming off and like slipping out of your hand, I think is much higher than anything we've talked about with an apple or something like that. My immediate answer as soon as I read the post would have been an orange. I think you can get an orange in the right size. I believe most oranges are probably right around that throwing size, maybe a tad big. And that's what a lot of people argued, is that an orange would be too big, but it has that good rough exterior to grip in your hand well. It's pretty solid. I mean, you could argue that its density, it's definitely not as dense as an apple per se, but it has decent density to it. Definitely better than like a tomato per se. So that would be probably my immediate answer. Also, oranges are very readily available. There were some people that were coming up with very interesting, weird answers like a celery root and stuff, which was a knotted, wonky, hard-looking thing. It's just not something you would commonly find. So I wanted to stick with more classic, basic answers. It is interesting that on this list there was a very noticeable lack of vegetables in general. There's a lot of vegetables I think vegetables are a very solid or food in most cases. So it's interesting, but I do understand that a lot of vegetables tend to be longer in a sense. Something like, say, zucchini, a squash, they have wonkier shapes usually. So I get a lot of people leaning more towards the fruits. I would argue that if, again, that slip factor is not something you have to worry about, an apple is probably the ideal fruit to throw for distance. Based on the reactions to the article and how hyped people were getting about it, I would be very surprised if no one went out, bought a bunch of fruits and vegetables, and tried to like launch them out of a baseball cannon kind of thing to see how far they can get them. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting topic. I figured I'd take it from online. I'm sorry I don't have the name of the Twitter user. I want to say I should look it up and maybe it was Bailey Carlin. I know the name, but I don't know what his actual Twitter handle was. His Twitter handle probably was Bailey Carlin, because usually people don't put their name on Twitter. But in any case, credit to them for coming up with the idea. I'm glad I had the opportunity to talk about it, give my input on it. And with that, I'm going to wrap the video up here. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.